Storytelling. When you hear the name General Zod, one image probably flashes in your mind. Terence Stamp, standing tall, cold, and commanding in Superman 2, looking at the Man of Steel with piercing eyes and uttering that immortal line, "Kneel before Zod." For millions, that moment became his cinematic signature. But behind the villain, behind the dark robes of Krypton's most feared general, was a man who lived a life far richer, more complicated, and more soulful than most ever realized. And now, with his passing at the age of 85 in August 2025, the world is not only mourning the loss of a great actor, but also asking, what kind of person was Terence Stamp? The rise of a screen icon. Terence Stamp wasn't just an actor, he was a phenomenon of the 1960s British New Wave, bursting onto the screen in films like Billy Budd 1962, where his hauntingly pure performance earned him an Oscar nomination. Stamp immediately marked himself as different from other rising stars. While his contemporaries, Michael Caine, Peter O'Toole, Richard Burton, commanded attention with booming voices and classic training, Stamp had something else, an intensity that lived in silence, in stillness, in those sharp cheekbones and hypnotic blue eyes. Throughout the 60s, he became the face of swinging London, not just because of his roles in The Collector or Modesty Blaise, but also because of the company he kept. Stamp was a true it boy, romantically linked with Jean Shrimpton, the world's first supermodel, and moving in circles with the Beatles and Mick Jagger. He was handsome, magnetic, and charming, yet never fully comfortable with fame. This tension between celebrity and soul would define the man he became. The wilderness years. And then something remarkable happened. Just as his star was burning brightest, Stamp did what few actors would dare to do. He walked away. By the 1970s, frustrated with the roles being offered, he left Hollywood and set off on a journey of spiritual discovery. He lived in India, studied with gurus, practiced yoga and meditation long before it was fashionable, and sought meaning far beyond the camera's lens. In interviews, Stamp often said he wasn't chasing money or stardom, he was chasing truth. This period transformed him. He came back not just as an actor, but as a man who carried wisdom, depth, and a rare stillness within him. And then came 1980. A whole new generation would meet Terence Stamp not as a rising star of London, but as General Zod in Superman 2. His Zod wasn't a loud, chaotic villain, he was controlled, elegant, terrifying in his calmness. With just a glance, Stamp could command the screen. He didn't need to shout to terrify Superman, he whispered, and the world trembled. That performance immortalized him. Decades later, fans still quote, "Kneel before Zod," at conventions, online, and in pop culture references. It cemented Stamp as one of cinema's great villains, but he was so much more than that. Beyond the villain. Outside of Zod, Stamp showed extraordinary range. He played the charming drag queen Bernadette in The Adventures of Priscilla, the Queen of the Desert in 1994, earning critical acclaim for his warmth and humanity. He brought gravitas to Star Wars: The Phantom Menace's Chancellor Valorum. He appeared in Wall Street, The Limey, Wanted, and even lent his voice to Smallville decades after Superman. His career spanned over 60 years, and with every role, Stamp carried that same intensity that first stunned audiences in the 1960s. But here's the real question. Behind the legendary roles, behind the fame and mystique, what kind of person was Terence Stamp really? That's where things get fascinating, because the answer lies not only in his films, but in his writings, his spiritual journey, and the way he spoke about love, loss, and life itself. In Steven Soderbergh's The Limey, Terence Stamp delivered one of the most unforgettable lines of his career. "Tell him I'm coming. Tell him I'm coming to burn it all down." That raw intensity, that simmering rage beneath his calm exterior, it wasn't just acting. It was Terence channeling decades of life, loss, and experience into a single performance. Critics would later call it one of the greatest late-career resurrections in cinema history. But behind the screen, what kind of man was Terence Stamp? In a BBC interview, Stamp once confessed, "I don't really think of myself as an actor. I think of myself as a seeker, somebody who's always trying to understand who he is." And that's the key to Stamp's soul. fame never fully defined him. Even after working with Fellini, Soderbergh, and being cast by George Lucas in Star Wars The Phantom Menace, Stamp admitted, "I was always drawn to the mystic life, yoga, meditation, just being in silence. Those things gave me more than applause ever could." In fact, at the height of his fame in the late 60s, Terence Stamp vanished from Hollywood and spent years in India. He studied meditation, lived humbly, and sought meaning far beyond the camera's lens. He once joked, "I was a movie star, and then I went off to be a nobody. And in a way, it was the best role I ever played." That humility carried him through life. Despite being a man women adored, even linked romantically with Jean Shrimpton and Brigitte Bardot, Stamp admitted in one interview with striking honesty, "I was hopeless with women. I could play these dashing lovers on screen, but in real life, I was painfully shy." And then there was Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. As Bernadette, the trans woman traveling across the Australian outback, Stamp defied expectations. The performance wasn't just brave, it was transformative. Critics said he gave the character grace and dignity at a time when such roles were rare in mainstream cinema. When asked why he took the role, Stamp simply said, "Because I wanted to play truth. I wanted to find the humanity in her, and I think we did." And of course, we can't forget Zod. With just 3 words, "Kneel before Zod," Stamp carved his name into pop culture forever. But here's the irony. He later admitted he didn't expect it to be such a phenomenon. In his words, "I thought it was just a job. But people come up to me decades later with their kids, and all they want me to say is, 'Kneel before Zod.' And I say it. Because why not? It gave them joy." So what kind of man was Terence Stamp? He was a paradox. A superstar who walked away from fame. A sex symbol who admitted to being shy. A villain on screen, but a gentle mystic in real life. And maybe that's why his death hits harder. Because we didn't just lose an actor, we lost a seeker. As he once said about life, "You come in with nothing, you leave with nothing. The only thing you really own is the person you become." And Terence Stamp became unforgettable. If you remember Terence Stamp not just as General Zod, but as the wise, soulful actor who shaped cinema across 6 decades, drop a "Kneel before Zod" in the comments. Let's keep his voice alive.